Hi, welcome to Mental Health Mondays. I am Hope Stafford, and I am here again today with Randy Rohr, spiritual life coach. And Randy, we're gonna touch on something difficult today. So
Mhm.
thank you for being here, and thank you in advance for sharing.
Mhm.
With the pandemic this past year and various other things, a lot of people have been dealing with some loss of loved ones. So you know, I know you have too, just recently with the loss of your brother, and I'm sorry about that. And
Mhm.
how do you tell people to cope and to remember their loved ones?
Mhm. Well, thanks for having me, Hope. And That's a really good question. And it's my brother did have he had gotten through the coronavirus. Although while he was in the hospital, he was actually in the hospital almost 6 weeks with the coronavirus, and um, nearly lost his life during that process. So we're quite certain that his death this time, I say this time, his death is a result of complications of that. His body trying to fight off other infections and wasn't able to do that well. So it was a very sudden and very unexpected event, and it's been difficult, to have happen. But your question is a good one of how do you cope and how do you honor the person in going on into the future. And um, I was just you and I were talking a few minutes ago. I uh, I kind of had a little bit of a personal embarrassment in that I the things that were being talked about my brother when both the minister and the people who shared their stories of their experiences with my brother. His name was Gary. All said that Gary never got upset. They never, every one of them pointed to that as one of the characteristics that they really appreciated about him, that he never got upset. Well, I said I was a little embarrassed because I never really noticed that. And the reason I didn't notice it, I think now as I look back on it, is my older brother and I were always arguing. So I just kind of by association thought he joined in that. And um, but it was a very powerful thing to hear that, especially his children. He has 4 adult children that all have kids. And every one of them, when they shared before the congregation, every one of them said the same thing. And the second oldest mentioned, he said, "We want you to know that Dad was like that when he was around other people, and he was exactly the same person when he was at home. So he wasn't putting on when you saw him being a kind, caring, and unruffled person." Um, and at that moment, I realized that I wanted to take that strength that my younger brother had, and I want to use that in my life to improve my life, but also to honor my brother's impact on my life. I literally felt grateful when I heard all those things. And I think I was grateful because here's a guy who does something that most of us don't accomplish, and that is being a real person of integrity and authenticity. They are who they say they are. We talk about it a lot, but you don't find many people doing it.
Yeah.
So my point is, it inspired me, and I was grateful that I had a brother that did that. More so, you know. Anyway, so I think when I got thinking about that, how is it that my brother had that kind of an influence and that kind of an attitude throughout his entire life? He passed away at 65 years old. So that's a long time to be able to sustain that. And what I realized, I remembered some things that he had said to me over the course of our adult lives. He said, I consider myself to be a problem solver. And I remember when he would tell me that, I would, what kind of problems are you solving? It didn't seem like there were any big problems you're solving. But I think what he was doing is, knowing him as well as I did, I think that when difficulties would happen, especially in relationships, because that's where you could see, that's where we usually see it worked out, that rather than thinking about what the other person is doing that's getting you angry, I believe, because my brother saw himself as a problem solver, and that's the way he thought about himself, he began thinking right away, how can I help solve this problem? And therefore, as opposed to what a lot of us do, a lot of us, when somebody upsets us, we start thinking about what a jerk they are and how they should do things different. And you better not do that to me, or I'll, or let's take the road rage thing. Somebody does something to you and you say, well, let me show you, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Well, my brother didn't do that. He started using his mind to think about, how can I help solve this situation? So he didn't build up his emotions and get angrier and angrier to the point where he finally burst out in anger. He began to think of, how can I help solve this? Which means he had to think about the other person and what may be going on with them, and how he could be a benefit to them and bring a balance to that situation. And so consequently, I think I came away from my brother's funeral feeling proud and inspired and happy, because not in a wrong way, but feeling my brother just gave me something that I can use to better my life, because I've always wanted to be that kind of person. I think most of us aspire to that, but we just fall down a bunch along the way. And so I want to take that, and I think we can all do that, from people that we know, and we don't have to wait for them to pass away. We can actually, when we see people that are doing things that we admire, that we want, to be thinking about, how can I be that kind of person? Not just act like them, but I want to change and be that kind of person. Because I think, going back to what I think my brother did, is he saw himself as a problem solver. So that's what he starts thinking right away, because that's who he was. And so if we try to be like that person and be a problem solver, or whatever it might be, a great host or hostess, or a very efficient person that jumps in and helps get things done so it gets done faster, or very efficient, or whatever it might be, very kind, very compassionate, to be that kind of person, so that when we enter a situation, we immediately begin to think of, like, for me, one of the people in my past was a gentleman. He was actually a pastor, and his name was David Grubbs. And I would think, when I was a pastor, I would think, well, what would Dave do? And it really worked great. It was amazing. So I guess I leave that with how to deal with difficult situations, as well as how to be a better person. So I feel better about my life.
Yeah.
And I'm improving, I would just offer that as a way to begin to think, and maybe write yourself a note of, like my brother, be a problem solver or whatever. So I can refer to that. And when a situation comes up, thinking in those terms right away from him. So that's my thoughts for, all of this.
Well, Randy, that's very insightful, and also I hope very helpful for people who, are going through tough times right now, to kind of learn how to cope with something sad. And it sounds like, by taking a positive out of that person's life, and
Mhm.
trying to live that in your own life. I really appreciate you sharing that today. And if anybody really wants to delve further into this with Randy, please feel free to reach out to him. And I'll go ahead and post your contact info with this video.
Okay.
So
All right.
thank you, Randy. And
Well,
again, sorry for
and could I just,
Oh, yes.
no, I'm sorry. I should have interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
I just want to be sure and capture something you started with, and that is in our loss. We're not this, there is a lot of loss right now. Just what we lost as a culture, as a world, that this is a proactive strategy for how to deal with that loss, as well as how to turn the good things in other people into positive. It's almost like recycling, you might say.
Yeah.
Recycling these difficulties and turning them. I'm glad I thought of that, because this is a very healthy recycling program that can bring good in the midst of loss. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Randy.
Well, thank you, Hope. As always, I enjoyed talking to you, and our friendship is real, and I love it, and I'm enjoying this very much.